The Las Vegas Raiders, they're in a tough spot right now with Aidan O'Connell's knee injury. How's this impacting their season, which, let's be honest, hasn't been going great anyway?
Yeah, this injury, it really complicates their options. They're currently 2-11, and now the quarterback situation, it's uncertain. They're going to be under a microscope for every choice they make from here on out.
There's a lot of speculation that O'Connell won't be able to play in Week 15 against the Falcons.
Bone bruises. They're not something you can just shrug off. The Raiders are playing it safe with O'Connell's recovery. It's understandable why they want their starter back, but with the season essentially over, this raises some strategic questions.
Sergeant Antonio Pierce seems to be hoping that O'Connell might recover quickly, but realistically, that's probably the long shot, right?
It makes sense why they'd prefer O'Connell. He's shown some good things this season. Maybe they're trying to find something consistent in a season that's been very up and down.
If we look at O'Connell's numbers this season, 63.2% completion rate, 899 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
What do you make of those?
He's been okay. Not amazing. He hasn't been giving the ball away a lot, but he hasn't been super impressive either. The stat that really stands out, though, he hasn't won a game as a starter this year.
O'Connell's season has been like a roller coaster. Third-string quarterback last year, then started getting a win, back-to-back up this year, then gets another shot, and now this injury.
It's been a wild ride for him, for sure. That constant change can be rough for any player, especially a young quarterback still trying to find his place in the league. All those ups and downs, it's hard to build any consistency.
Let's talk about the other quarterbacks involved here. Gardner Minshew started the season, then he got injured. Now it looks like Desmond Ridder might step in. The irony is he might be facing the team that drafted him, the Atlanta Falcons.
It's a pretty interesting twist. But this whole quarterback carousel, it raises a bigger issue. Is it really about who the quarterback is? Or are there fundamental problems with the Raiders that are holding them back, regardless of who's playing quarterback?
The Raiders have now lost 9 games in a row. It makes you wonder, is this constant changing of quarterbacks actually part of the problem? Maybe they should focus on some of the underlying issues instead of trying to find a quick fix at quarterback.
Definitely. It's a Band-Aid solution. You got to address the root cause, not just the symptoms. The Raiders need to really examine their whole approach and figure out what needs to change. And that might involve much more than just the quarterback position.
What are some of the specific areas that you think the Raiders should be focusing on? Are there any glaring weaknesses besides the quarterback that could be contributing to this losing streak?
A few areas come to mind. Their offensive line has been struggling, which makes things even tougher for any quarterback. Their defense hasn't been great at putting pressure on opponents and creating turnovers. And there doesn't seem to be much of a cohesive offensive identity. All of these things can make a team struggle no matter who's throwing the passes.
That's a really good point. So it seems like the Raiders have more than just a quarterback issue on their hands. Their next game against the Falcons could give us a better idea of how they plan to move forward. Do you think this game could impact how they evaluate their current quarterbacks and their overall team strategy?
This game against the Falcons is a big test for the Raiders. They need to see how their quarterbacks perform when the pressure is on. It's also a chance for them to see how the team functions as a unit and identify any areas where they really need to improve.
It's a trial by fire. We'll see which players step up and which areas need immediate attention. We'll be watching closely to see how this game plays out and what it tells us about the Raiders' strengths and weaknesses.
The Falcons game, it's an interesting one because Ridder might be playing against his old team.
That's kind of a poetic twist, right? He was drafted by the Falcons and now he could show them what they let go. Do you think that could affect how he plays?
I think it adds a personal element for Ridder. He'll want to prove himself, show he can lead a team to victory, especially against the team that didn't believe in him.
Could a good game from Ridder change how the Raiders handle their quarterback situation?
It might force them to reevaluate. If Ridder plays well and shows leadership, they might start seeing him as a potential answer, especially with the spot they're in right now.
That would mess up their draft strategy, wouldn't it? If they were thinking of using their #1 pick on a quarterback,
Yeah.
a strong performance from Ridder could make them change their mind and focus on other positions.
No question. It could shake up their entire offseason plan. Instead of looking for a quarterback, they might prioritize strengthening other areas of the team, like the offensive line or the defense.
So what Ridder does in this game could have a big impact on the whole team and their plans for the future.
Exactly. It's not just one game. It's about looking at their options and making decisions that will shape the franchise.
Let's go back to Aidan O'Connell for a second. His journey's been quite a story, hasn't it? He starts as a third-string quarterback, then becomes a starter. Then he hits some roadblocks injuries.
It's a real testament to his resilience and how determined he is. He's faced obstacles at every step, but he's kept fighting for his spot, showing he can step up when they need him.
Last year, remember, he got that surprise start and won the game for the Raiders. He seemed to have a knack for exceeding expectations.
That win, It gave us a glimpse of what he could do. It showed he can handle the pressure and deliver. This season, though, it hasn't been as smooth for him.
It looks like he's regressed a bit, starting as a backup again and getting injured. What do you think could be causing this?
We got to remember, development isn't always a straight lineup. There are going to be bumps in the road, plateaus, even times when it seems like you're going backwards. The instability with the Raiders, all the changes they've gone through, it's definitely affected his development and how he's performed.
It's tough for a young quarterback, always adjusting, trying to find his rhythm in the middle of all this chaos.
When quarterbacks are constantly being swapped in and out, when there's no clear offensive game plan, it disrupts a young player's development.
So O'Connell's talented, and he's a fighter, but the situation he's in hasn't helped him grow.
Right. You can't really judge him as an individual when the whole team is struggling.
O'Connell's future with the Raiders is kind of uncertain. What do you think could happen to him?
It all depends on how he recovers from this injury and what the Raiders decide to do. If they decide to move on from him, bring in a different quarterback through the draft or free agency, O'Connell's chances with the Raiders might be limited.
But he's shown he's resilient, he can adapt, and he's got potential. Even if he doesn't end up being the Raiders' long-term quarterback, he could find success somewhere else.
I think so too. Teams value quarterbacks who have been through what he has and who can perform under pressure. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get another shot to prove himself with a different team.
It's a good reminder that in the NFL, things don't always go in a straight line. There are twists, turns, unexpected detours, and sometimes those setbacks can lead to even bigger opportunities.
It's those stories, the battles, the constant striving for something better. That's what makes the NFL so interesting.
O'Connell's story, it's about resilience and how unpredictable a football career can be.
His future, we don't know what it holds, but he's got the talent and the drive to keep going. It'll be interesting to see what happens to him, whether it's with the Raiders or somewhere else.
What's happening with the Raiders? It shows how complicated things are in professional sports. One injury, result in a Game 1 draft pick. It can affect the whole organization.
It's like a game of chess. Every move has consequences.
The Raiders are at a crossroads. How they deal with the quarterback situation, what happens in the game against the Falcons, their draft picks, it's all going to shape their future.
It reminds us that the story never ends in the NFL. There's always a new chapter, a new challenge, a new chance.
And we get to watch it all unfold, analyze the strategies, talk about what it means.
It's great to be a part of this, to dig into the details of the game, share our thoughts with people who love football as much as we do.
For the last part of our discussion, let's talk about the draft and what the Raiders might do with their picks. That number 1 pick is a big deal, and how they use it could determine their future for years to come.
The Raiders, they're in a unique position, potentially getting the number 1 draft pick. It's a big opportunity, but it also puts them in a difficult spot.
It's that age-old question. Do you go for the quarterback, the guy who could be the face of your franchise? Or do you use that pick to fix other problems and build a stronger team?
It's a tough call. It comes down to how they see their current players and what their long-term plan is. If they think they're just a quarterback away from being a contender, then using that number 1 pick on a potential star quarterback might make sense.
But maybe they need to be realistic, recognize that there are bigger problems that need fixing. The offensive line, the defense, maybe even the coaching staff.
Right. Even the most talented quarterback can't do it all if the rest of the team isn't playing well. It's like building a house on a shaky foundation. Eventually, the whole thing's going to collapse.
So even if they get the best quarterback in the draft, it's not a magic solution. They might still struggle if they don't fix those other weaknesses.
For sure. Building a winning team, it's not easy. It takes a solid foundation, a good plan, and a commitment from everyone in the organization.
Let's say they decide to use the number 1 pick to address those other needs. What positions or players should they be looking at? Are there any real difference makers out there who could really help them?
If they don't go for a quarterback, there are some exciting possibilities. A dominant pass rusher could really boost their defense. A lockdown cornerback would make their secondary much stronger. Or they could trade down, get more picks, and address multiple needs.
It's fun to think about all the options. That no 1 pick gives them a lot of flexibility. What they do with it will tell us a lot about what they think is important and their plan for the future.
The draft. It's not just about picking players. It's about building a team, a culture, setting the stage for success.
In the end, what matters is making good decisions, developing players, creating an environment where they can win. It's not easy, but that's what makes the NFL so exciting.
It's that drive to be the best, the strategies, the stories of success and failure. It's what keeps us hooked. And the Raiders, with all their ups and downs, they represent all of that.
This has been a great look at the Raiders, their quarterback situation, their options, and their future. It reminds us that every choice counts in the NFL. Every game matters, and the journey is just as important as the destination.
We've discussed a lot today. The quarterback dilemma, the strategic choices, the long-term impact of their decisions.
We talk about how players develop, how important it is to have a strong foundation, and that constant pursuit of excellence in the NFL.
It's been fun talking about all this with you, and I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it too.
Goodbye, and see you in the next video.